Enjoy.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this final session of our September Symphony. As Andres just announced, we will be discussing transparency and data science behind standard essential patents. We have just heard the wonderful tones of Scheherazade by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, and this opening reflects our theme that data tells stories. So today we will explore what data is available in the SEP space and what insights it offers. I'm pleased to be joined today by an exceptional group of experts. We have Mr. Pere Arche-Castels, who is the stream leader of the Observatory on Patents and Technology from the European Patent Office. The European Patent Office recently published a study on standards and the European patent system, and this was accompanied by a data set which connects patents and standards. So we have a patent office with us. Then we have Ms. Magali Fitzgibbon, who is the Legal and Governance Director of the European Telecommunications Standards Institute, and ETSI is an institution that curates one of the largest databases on that are linking patents and standards. Then on my right, we have Mr. Sharaz Gill, who is the founder of IP Mind, and IP Mind is an AI-driven legal services company which is specializing in the identification and licensing of standard essential patents. And finally, we have Mr. Tim Pohlman, who is the managing director of LexisNexis Intellectual Property Solutions Americas. Tim is the founder of IPlytics, the first platform for transparent SEP intelligence. A warm welcome to our expert panel. And thank you for sharing your time and insights with us. As an opening to this discussion, I would like to walk you through a part of WIPO's initiative to create one-stop shop for standard essentiality information in patents. And we have prepared a short slideshow, so if we can have the slides. Thank you. So we heard extensively in the course of these 2 days about WIPO's SEP strategy and about its 4 pillars. So we are going to zoom in now into the WIPO as a source of knowledge and data pillar, and especially in one of the initiatives, which is to integrate the standard essentiality declarations in patent scope. Patent scope is our patent search tool. It is the official platform for publication of PCT applications, but we also host over 80 different patent collections. So we thought that there is critical mass to integrate this information, the standard essentiality declarations in patent scope. As you have probably also heard from our strategy, this data, which is related to standard essential patents, is scattered. It's very difficult to gather, so we have set ourselves on a mission to gather this information and organize it in patent scope. And for this, we have collaborated with 3 standard development organizations, ETSI, IEEE, and ITU, and we are pleased to announce that their data is now available in our patent search tool. This integration was not seamless. It required a lot of data wrangling, Lots of activities that are, of course, a topic on its own. I have just included this last chart, the ring chart, which shows the different states that one patent can be in when integrated in patent scope. So the lowest rate that we had of success to connect this data was about 86%, and it goes up to 96%. Nevertheless, we, with all the limitations and challenges that we faced, we still managed to integrate about 200,000 distinct patents or applications which were declared as essential at one of the 3 SDOs. And currently we have around 700,000 patent to standard relationships. These cover around 40 plus jurisdictions, out of which about 20 have at least 1,000 standard essential patents. And the top 5 are, of course, the IP5 offices. So I will just quickly show what exactly can be found in patent scope, and then we can start our discussion. So this is patent scope, and now we have added these 3 additional search fields. So you can search for patents and the standard developing organization, or a standard, or a declarant, and this can, of course, be combined with all of the pre-existing search functionalities in patent scope and create complex queries. And of course, there are the analytical functionalities in patent scope which are pre-existent and which can be leveraged. This is a simple search for Etsy, for example, and as you can see here, we have the data organized by top countries and top applicants, IPC codes, and we have a result list. So what is actually available in terms of data related to standards? We have separated this data into a separate tab, and we have accompanied the data with all the limitations and all the origins of the data that was integrated. So this disclaimer can be consulted, and it explains everything in detail. In terms of the details of the standard information, we have direct links to the standard developing organizations. So in this case, we are looking at an example with ITU, and we can navigate directly to the details of the declaration itself. So this is, in a way, transparency to the transparency. So the information that we display in patent scope can be also verified at its origins. And we, of course, provide links to the standard itself, and this also depends on the SDO. Some of them can be accessed directly, others take us to the nearest page that can take us to the standard. And finally, we also include additional information which is different for different SDOs. In the case of ITU, we also have contact information, and we have the licensing option, which is chosen in the declaration. And finally, I just wanted to mention that we have extensive documentation, which is included in patent scope, and we also organized a webinar when this was released. And the information regarding the webinar is still available. There is a presentation that can be consulted. And as soon as we integrate other types of data related to standard essential patents, we will, of course, organize new webinars. And in the meantime, we can be contacted for any information needed. So with this, I conclude my short presentation on our efforts to integrate standard essentiality information in patent scope. And I would like to start our discussion. this question is for you, Magali, as ETSI is one of the first collaborators with Patent Scope, and it manages one of the largest databases in the standard essentiality declarations. In your view, what is happening currently in the transparency initiatives? Which ones are delivering real results, and what key obstacles still prevent truly reliable and accessible SEP information?
Yes. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this very interesting panel. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the audience to have the courage to stay a bit longer with us. So ETSI and WIPO have now a long partnership for several years, back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And the Patent Scope is a good example of this very positive collaboration between our two organizations. And actually, this project was possible because ETSI has a data set of its ETSI IPR database. And so that leads me to my first point to answer to your question. So ETSI decided a long time ago, of course, to make its IPR disclosure publicly available to the public, but it is also providing a data set of its IPR database with an enormous quantity of data in it. And this initiative that was done by ETSI has really an interest for transparency, especially in a context where this was mentioned in the previous panel of this 2 day of conference, where you have many standards for which you have different declarants with many declarations for SEP, with many SEP disclosure, and also products that can embed numerous standards, and again with numerous essential patents that are declared in them. And so the fact that this data is made available, of course, doesn't achieve transparency. Actually, if I provide you with a set of data and you have a look in it, you would probably start crying. However, the fact that it's available is a good enabler for the stakeholder to use it, and with appropriate knowledge and appropriate tools to dive into it, use it, exploit it, and make use of this data and speaking, provide insight, if I may say. And we have a few examples here in this panel. We have, for example, service providers that have actually access to this data and that are using them. We have organizations like WIPO with example of a patent scope. And this data is also used, for example, within the industry, both by SEP holders and implementers. For example, with the business tools intelligence, also to help them to navigate in this enormous quantity of data. And actually, we have more and more interest for this data set, probably much more than what was expected at the very beginning when it was released years ago. And so that led ETSI to evolve on this initiative. And what we realized is that currently there were technical obstacles, in particular to use this data set. And that's why very recently we launched a new project around it. And so currently it is already available in the format that is more easily usable by our super users. And we also have a project that should be fulfilled during the year 26 to provide our super users with APIs that will enable to have a more easy use of this data set in the various tools that our super using are using for this. And so we're also talking here about possible obstacles. So we know that nothing is perfect, of course, and in particular, there's always questions arising in relation with the quality of data in the ETSI IPR database. So of course, for some of this data quality, there's things that ETSI can do directly. However, it is not always the case because, as you know, we are not at the initiative of the real source of this data. So the declarations are made by the stakeholders in our database. And for example, we regularly have the topic of the update of a declaration that is put on the table. I think it's also part of the questions that were actually asked by the audience. And it is true that today we see different practices in relation with disclosures. We have early disclosures before the standard is finalized. We also have disclosures of patent applications. So maybe in the future we will be registered, maybe they will be rejected. So it is true that it raises the questions about should such data be updated. And it's not something that actually can be done by HC directly, because this declaration are legally binding. So of course, HC will not be in capacity to modify it directly. And so that raises the question of, in this case, to see if stakeholders would be willing to do so. So, if we were considering, of course, to make things evolve, for example, in the HCI policy, of course, that would require to change it. And as it was mentioned by one of the keynote speakers on the first day, so that implies to have a minimum of consensus among HC members, and we know that the practices between members are very different. The interests can be very different, so it's always a very difficult questions to address. So that's if you want things to evolve and make them mandatory. But there's also a different approach for this, and to try to improve quality of the in the database. And it's more on at the level of incentive we can provide to the declarants. And rather than considering to request updates in the HC IPR database, what we can see is also if we can find an incentive for declarants to do so. We heard in the different panels the previous days that there's willingness to be transparent when there can be an interest, return on investment on it. We also talk about the burden, the cost that could represent such declaration, eventually provide more information. So that's something that can be considered, way to how we can encourage people to update declaration, provide maybe more information. And for example, something that can be considered within HC is to provide a more an easiest way to provide such updates. Currently, it is, and I acknowledge it is true that it's complicated to do in our database, and an approach could be to provide our declarants with a more user-friendly way to do things, and let them keep, of course, the responsibility of providing the information when they deem it appropriate. And so I will leave it as an open question for the moment.
Thank you, Magali. Actually, I think somebody in the audience already predicted our next question, and you also mentioned that team and IPlytics have been one of the major users of your database. So I also note that you mentioned that the updates are the one of the challenges that you're facing, and getting up-to-date information, providing incentives so that the declarants continue to provide you with up-to-date information. So then my next question is for you, Tim, and about your experience with HC's data, and what have you seen any other additional gaps that Magali just mentioned, and what improvements would be most efficient in enabling transparency?
Yeah, thank you so much, and also thank you for having me to start with. I think any kind of database and transparency that has good intentions and that comes from a neutral player is for the good of this industry, and I think it's also great that you have the data now in patent scope. I think that all makes things better. It will not solve all our problems, but it will contribute to some more transparency. I also just saw the comment with that patent scope now including SEP data, isn't that competing with IPlytics? And I don't think at all that this is the case. In the opposite, I think it's better that more data is out there. Because I think different players and providers and actors in our community have different roles, right? I think you could argue, I'm with LexisNexis now. We're selling 5 different patent access data tools, but patent data is also available for free, you can argue, at the EPO, right? Or standards data with Etsy or declaration data with Etsy. I think as a private player in all this, we are trying to take publicly available information and help the players in the markets, the owners of the patents, the implementers, product innovators, the pools, even the patent assertion entities and the lawyers to make better decisions on top. And our customers, when they look at data, they need 100% accuracy, right? We, for example, update the ownership information of a patent every day. We connect that with a company corporate tree information to know which company actually owns this particular company. Is this a subsidiary of another company? And you can click one click and you have the biggest player and the shares of the patents they own in a database. And I can also click another button and say, these are the companies that would be in the Avanci pool, right? So we are building features for decision making on top of all these kind of solutions, right? And of course, what we also can do is we can, and I'm on purpose now using a more negative word, we can manipulate the data in a positive way, right? You can see that, for example, there's a washing machine patent on the Etsy database. Obviously, it's not Etsy's fault, right? Samsung declared that, not because Samsung wanted to declare a washing machine patent, but it happens because data is complex, right? But Etsy is in no position to delete this patent because it has been declared by Samsung. We are in the position to delete this patent because we say we are not an official organization, right, that provides a platform for transparency and they can make no judgments on what happens. We are a private player. We can do, in the end, what we want, right? And our clients want a clean database. So what we did is we did all the cleaning and we did all the connections of the data with other databases and still didn't arrive at a result that our customers were happy with. So we went one step further and we created an initiative we called Settler Verified, where we went to all of the top declaring companies. In fact, I think as of today, 38 companies participated, and these are all the major ones. And we basically said, this is the data that we have for 4G and 5G that has been declared. Compare that with your internal records, right? We didn't talk about essentiality here, right? It's just about declaration. Anything you feel should be in Etsy. And we found a lot of patents that even the patent owner either forgot to declare or the interface at the time of declaration didn't work properly, but the person who did it didn't know that. Or we found, again, these patents that should never have been declared, and internally they had it cleaned out, but not on the Etsy database. That led to some companies redeclare patents, but that led to also a lot of cleaning on our end to make sure 100% of what a company internally flags as declared for 4G, 5G is represented in our database. And you can imagine if you do that for the whole industry, everyone can then trust the declaration information of each other. And even though this is a database of self-declared patents, and we all know some of these are essential or not, we can use that maybe as a neutral starting point now to do additional essentiality analysis, right, with some of the players also on this panel, or some claim charting sampling, but we have a common understanding of where we're starting, right? And these are some of the examples of what a private database can do. Last comment on this, Etsy by far is the most thorough and best database. It is almost, I would say, complete. 99% of the patents that are essential to 4G and 5G are at the database. I think that is a great achievement of your team, and the work that Etsy has been doing over the years is also because the Etsy IPR policy kind of mandates that you have to declare specific patents. We don't have that anywhere else. We don't have that in video, audio, Wi-Fi, charging, all the other standards subject to SCPs. The standard organizations have databases that are incomplete, that allow blanket statements where you don't see specific patent numbers. We have some pool programs that are transparent, but it's never complete, right? And again, this is a situation where we as a private data provider can say we are estimating, patents owned for HEVC, VVC. Again, not perfect. We're not claiming these are SEPs, but it gives companies a starting point, right? And we can fill gaps where public databases don't have information. As a private vendor, we can do that, right? Because we never are a public organization that puts something out and a court can't say, like we said, it's essential, and that's true. We have disclaimers saying we're a private player. This is our view of the patent landscape, and you can use it or you can not use it. It's a commercial license, and you can subscribe or you cannot subscribe. So that's my last comment. But I think it's great that we have all these different players contributing to transparency at different levels.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for explaining this. And especially, I was surprised to hear that you actually propagate back the data from the declarants to Etsy in certain cases, which is a very good improvement.
Maybe we recommend the declaring company, if they have internally a 5G flagged patent that is not in Etsy, to redeclare it. We're not declaring it, but we recommend them, please go to Etsy and declare it. We don't want to be the only company to have this patent as declared, right, in our database. So that's just a recommendation. We don't declare.
It's understood. Yeah, it's understood that it's recommendation. So I think, it's all about the quality of the patent. Especially, it's important the examination process. So I would like to turn now to you, Pere. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the examination process at the European Patent Office, and especially about the fact that you're using standard development organization documentation in your prior art search and in your how does this maybe help improve the patent quality and maybe reduce SEP conflicts?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Magdalena, and thank you to WIPO for the invitation and for the organization of this great event. So we've been talking mostly about SEP declaration data so far, right? And SEP declaration data provided by Etsy is great and attracts a great interest, has the spotlight on it for many reasons that we are all aware of. But that's not the only data that Etsy generates, and that's not the only data that SDOs generate, right? There's also SDO disclosures that take place during the standard development processes, and I'm talking about contributions, I'm talking about technical specifications that take place in working groups, and so on, right? So from a patents office perspective, for our core activity, which is to grant strong patents, high quality patents, that to inventions that meet the patentability criteria, that's novelty, inventive step, SEP declaration data is inconsequential, right? So it has no impact. So the first type of data we were talking about, the one that the industry and many practitioners care so much about, for our core activities it's not important. What's truly important is the other data I was talking about, which are all these SDO disclosures, contributions, technical specifications disclosed in working groups. That's important to establish novelty and inventive step. And in such a fast-paced environment, right, where the development of standards, it's a highly dynamic process where many stakeholders meet in sequential meetings, and they disclose contributions in one meeting, patent those, and maybe we'll build on these contributions in the next meeting and we'll patent those again. It's very important for us to be able to tell which contributions are substantial and meet the patentability criteria. That's very important, right? So, and I believe I'll have the opportunity to talk more about that. And so I'll keep a few things, important things on this topic for my next intervention. So now beyond this point, right, that having SDO data on contributions, technical specifications is important. We check this point, right? We have this data, and I will explain how I'll talk a lot more about that. So that's checked. On top of that, and that's a must-have. That's not optional. That's something an office, and we do have it, must have to grant strong patents in these domains. Now, beyond this core activity, it might add value to also integrate data on SCP declarations to some of our flagship products, for example, SPASnet, for example, PatStat, to increase clarity for users as to how likely it is that certain patents are related to SCPs or are in the SCP domain, right? And this is something that in our coming initiatives, which include a study planned for 2026, we're considering doing. Right? So we're moving in this direction. And that's the main comment so far, right? And farther down the road, there's the question on whether these declared SCPs are truly essential. That's another matter. We're aware that several users are interested in this point, and to what extent patent offices can contribute to this segment too. And we are in listening mode. We take that into account. We are looking into it. Right? That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. So then, this seems to be in a way a successful approach into the examination. What would other patent offices need to replicate this successfully?
Let me be sure that, because if I go into that, I would like then to maybe explain a bit more how the data is collected, and I'm not sure that this is all the opportunities that I'll have to talk about that. But if we're going into this question, into this area, then be assured, and I'll go back into the topic, right? That this is not a recipe, an easy recipe, something that can be done in one shot. It's several things, right? Integrating these SDO databases into the patent granting process requires touching on several fronts. One of them is establishing a trust-based relationship with SDOs, a long-run relationship to incorporate their databases into our system. Right? Another important point is to have the IT capacity and the IT capabilities to then extract the data. It's not just about hosting the data, right? It's about integrating it into the system and into the search tools that examiners use when carrying out their assessments and their examination and then their novelty assessments, right? And then there's another last point, which is that, and let me make sure I don't forget this one. Yes, the organizational aspect of it, which is very important, right? We have a team of examiners, documentalists, taking care of each one of the different SDO databases. They update those, they maintain it. There are coordinators, there's training for these examiners too, right? So it's these three levers that must be touched. The relational one with external stakeholders, with SDO, very important. Then there's the IT one, these capacities must be had internally. And then the organizational one to organize the team of examiners in a way that this can be accomplished and integrated into the patent grant processing.
Thank you. So the idea was actually to think about whether better declaration quality which will improve, of course, the core source data, will then feed into all these other systems that, like, for example, like Applytics, or maybe, I don't know if, Shiraz, you're also using Etsy data, or this could maybe help better data for your products.
Hello, everybody. I thought I wasn't going to get a chance to speak there because everybody had so much to say, but fortunately, I did get one. It's It's rather unusual to see myself so magnificently rendered as I am today up there. That's wonderful. Let me try and make everything I say magnificent. It is late on a Friday afternoon. I'm conscious that may not happen, but I'll try to be interesting. So first thing, ETSI IPR database declarations are of very little use to us at IPmind. I say this because I have been a consumer of it. I've worked as patent examiner, litigator, I've done licensing, pretty much done it all, and I've seen it. In licensing negotiations, if you use landscapes based on declarations, you're setting yourself up for a fall, depending on who you're talking to. Because effectively, these declarations are voluntary. They're very easy to challenge. You can pick out any patent at random and show it's not essential. And that undermines your whole argument, your whole position. Anything you say after that is just not going to be taken seriously. And so, for us, as a licensing executive, we had a lot of difficulty with that. I worked for VIA for a while, licensing the other way. It was very difficult to get people to take the landscapes we generated very seriously. The problem is not so much the data. I mean, Tim IPlytics did a great job of cleaning up the ETSI IPR database and making it accessible. When I was litigating back in the 2010s, it was very difficult to get data out of the database in any meaningful way. But it's great having that data, but I think the real fundamental problem here is that that database was never intended to be a proxy for SEP ownership. It is about the willingness to license on FRAND terms. And because of that, and the ETSI guidance right up to today says the same thing. Pretty much, if in doubt, declare. You should declare. And we've got these blanket declaration forms, which are still annexed in the policy. You should declare because you want to be sure you're willing to license anything that turns out to be essential. And if you have a database sort of built on that premise, then it's inherently flawed when it comes to being a proxy for essentiality. It's just wrong. It's never going to be right. You can make the data as clean as you like. You can add all these additional attributes, but they don't address the fundamental problem. So, in answer to your question, Madeleine, do we use it at IPmind? No, we do something different. We do essentiality. We claims chart every single patent claim that comes our way. To date, we've done over 90,000 claims charts across different standards. AI, with the arrival of large language models, changed everything. It is now possible to generate quality claims charts at scale. And we're doing it, and we have a lot of customers in the industry. I'll come back to IPmind in a while if I get the opportunity. But I think that it's very important to just go back and emphasize that the ETSI IPR database is inherently unsuited to this type of analysis for supporting licensing, and you don't need to use it anymore. There was a time when it was the best thing we had, but there are better things out there now.
I was checking the questions. There is this one which says, can one source of truth exist for standard-related patents, given platforms like PatentScope, IPlytics, ETSI, and potentially UK IPO will offer such data? So we made a little bit the round.
I mean, to me, it's always, the question in itself, to me, is wrong. And the thing is, we have to accept that we are living in a very complex world, right? I think we can also say, is one FRAND rate true? And I think, no, it's a range, right? It's a framework, and we will come out with ranges. And if I think about the data, I think about it the same way. What is the share of Ericsson's portfolios? It's not one number, it's not one truth, it's probably a range of, within we would estimate that share. Recently there was a case in Germany, there was a case at the UBC, same patent, Tree Wireless, one court said it's essential, the other said it's not. What's the truth, right? I think we have to somewhat accept that we can't say it's 455 patents, right? Or 1,000 that much patents. We have to accept that we can have data points that provide information that can tell us something, that have limitations, and then we can compare the data points and see if they come out with a similar result. And then the parties that negotiate can or cannot use that as a proxy and can integrate that in their negotiations among a technical discussion, a discussion about the product. There's so many things in a patent negotiation that are also beyond patent data or data that we talk about. So I think the truth is not what we should try to find. This is also probably why the attempts to regulate were a little bit too ambitious, because the market will not, or there is no truth, or it's hard to, or it's almost impossible to get to the truth, but the market also will not need that truth, right? We will probably need something that makes everyone feel better and informed, right? And as an earlier speaker said, equally unhappy means we find some price point where we can have a solution. So that will be my 2 cents on the truth point.
If I can maybe say something about this. I don't think there's going to be one source of truth on this matter, because when you look at those different databases, they do not try to achieve the same purpose. For instance, if you take the example of the HCIPR database, it was developed to enable our members to comply with the obligation in relation with the HCIPR policy and to disclose the patents they believe to be essential in the course of development standardization process. So it is not a licensing platform, for example, so it's not here to enable stakeholder to handle the licensing discussion. It is not the database of a patent office, so it is not here to provide clear information on the status of a given patent in relation with a patent examination process or its renewal. So I think we have to be cautious when you talk about one source of truth. I don't think it exists, and it's more question of, for each database, how we can, in this case, improve the quality of the data, but keeping in mind the objective of the various databases.
Yeah, can I respond on that? Yeah. So what do we mean by truth? I think the answers we've heard so far are perfectly legitimate. They're answered by effectively sort of data scientists, people who understand data in a particular way. Let me answer as a patent attorney or as a licensing executive, because my take on truth is somewhat different, as you may all know. So here's the thing. What is truth in terms of essentiality? I say, as a patent attorney, for any patent which is being read onto a standard, there's usually a gray zone. Why is there a gray zone? Well, because of construction issues. Words are inherently imperfect means of expressing ideas. And this is what we struggle with as patent attorneys. So if you're reading a claim, you break the claim down into claim features, as we try to do with IPmind. You read it onto a standard. You have to ask yourself at every point, what does this word mean, and what does it mean in this context? And there might be reference back to the patent specification, to diagrams, all sorts of things. So what you're always going to get is a gray zone. Yeah? And this is why, Tim's right. You can get 2 judges adjudicating completely differently on the same patent claim against the same infringement. And that's got to be built into any analysis you do. What I would submit is the answer is that you want to find those patents that are in that gray zone, that are arguably essential. And then you can have a form of truth, and it's a useful truth for licensing and determining who owns what in the stack. And I think, again, I'm going to just say this very forthrightly, AI is now in a situation where it can do that.
Thank you, Sharaz. I think you have already touched on the last topic that we were planning to discuss. And I think yesterday somebody was mentioning we haven't spoken about AI. So we have about 15 minutes to speak now about AI. Data and AI, they go together. So I actually wanted to start with you because you have your AI-driven legal solutions company. So I wanted to ask you, what is the new level of clarity that artificial intelligence brings to the SEP landscape, and what can we do now that was not possible before. But before you start to answer, I just wanted to mention that I would like to hear the views of all the panelists on this. So
Keep it short.
well,
That's all right. I'll try.
No.
I'll try. It's getting late. So just quickly, we're a patent attorneys licensing support team. We have access to standards engineers. We're helping a lot of SMEs try to negotiate licenses with big licensors, particularly in the context of IoT. Now, what we found was, IP Analytics and all those similar tools are great as far as they go. But it was too easy to challenge for the licensors to challenge the landscapes we were putting forward. So when large language models came along, we saw an opportunity there to see if we could develop something better. And what we did was to really attempt to address the essentiality question in the same way a patent attorney would. So what we've done is we've tried to create an artificial patent attorney which reasons in the same way as we would, but can do it reliably at scale. So that's been the overarching goal. What was clear to us was that AI has had so many false starts in its history. I remember being an engineering student back in the 1980s and being told AI was going to change everything, and guess what? It didn't. And then, in the 2000s, heard the same thing. Nothing happened. It's just failed to deliver on promises. And because I've been around the IPR licensing space for a very, very long time, I know how divided it is, and I know how much scrutiny any solution you provide will get. And so the key thing we wanted to deliver was transparency. That's what this panel is about, transparency. And how did we decide we could deliver that? And the answer was that there's only one way really to do that at scale, is to claims chart every single data point. So that's what we do. And so if you create a landscape, then effectively, if anyone challenges it and says, well, we don't agree with this, we will say, well, what don't you agree with? You don't agree with your ownership share, you don't agree with someone else's, then here are the claims charts. Have a look. And that's quite interesting, because what a lot of large licensors have a habit of doing is dumping large volumes of claims charts on SMEs and other potential licensees and asking them to do the analysis themselves. And often they're not set up to do that. So you can turn that around and say, well, look, here's your share. This is what we've identified. Tell us why we're wrong. Now, you may be surprised to hear, for us, we thought we would have effectively found the holy grail of SEP licensing. So we thought we'd be in a major success and we'd all be rich by now. But as you can see, I'm here on a Friday afternoon. So obviously that didn't work out so well. So why might that be? And I've been reflecting on this quite a bit recently, and certainly in the context of this panel. And the answer is, well, do we really want transparency? Who wants transparency? What is transparency? If transparency is knowing the exact relative ownership of the stack, well, that will be great, but we've got a functioning ecosystem as it is. As we've heard repeatedly and hear from everybody, the system works. It's very flawed, but licensing works. Handsets get made. They get made very efficiently. We've all got the phones we want. Everybody's happy. Occasionally, there is a bit of a ruckus, and we end up in litigation. Litigation lawyers are happy, but it always settles in the end, and so the system works. What if, then, you delivered true transparency where you could show the relative ownership and could do so definitively? Well, the big licensors, well, the answer to that is, well, it depends on what that true landscape looks like. If you confirm the existing landscape, then you'll make the landscape, you'll make all the big licensors very happy, because they'll say, this is what we said all along. We were absolutely right. That's brilliant. We can just carry on changing, we can just carry on charging what we charge. But then you might upset the implementers who like to renegotiate at the end of every license. So they might not be too happy. Because I've heard a lot about transparency from implementers in the last couple of days. And I worked for HTC for a long time and negotiated the in-licenses. for us, I can't speak for HTC now, but it was all about business. It was all about getting the best deal possible. And FRAND was always a secondary consideration. And I think that does apply to a lot of implementers today. So I think you always want to have scope for negotiation whenever a license expires. And so you want to have those gray zones, which is why the current data analysis tools, such as IPlytics, are actually quite good, because they give you scope for argument. They give both sides scope for argument. And the other side of the coin, of course, is what if you showed that the status quo is completely wrong? What if you showed that Qualcomm and Nokia and Ericsson in wireless licensing had relatively small shares? How would that work? How would they feel? Would they be willing to embrace your product? And the answer is probably not. They'd be foolish if they did. What we found is interesting is we don't have that many companies interested in our landscapes. For us, not many licensors interested in landscapes. Implementers are more interested. What the licensors we work for want us to do is actually identify new hidden SEPs in their portfolios, things they haven't found themselves because their portfolios are so big, or to evaluate new portfolios, or equally read standards between different patents, cross standards reads. You can read, for example, LTE patents onto some aspects of Wi-Fi, and then you can double license the patents. So we've been asked to do things like that. So I think it's a rather interesting question. Do we really want transparency? And I'll stop there.
Thank you. I think maybe one of the other panelists would like to answer. Do we want transparency?
I mean, yeah, I think Shiraz has said a lot of things, and it would be too simple to comment. I think to start with AI, I think indeed large language models can help with things like claim charting. I think today you still need subject matter experts, as people like Shiraz is, to control this, right? It's not a button and it's essential or not. Like you need real patent attorneys, subject matter experts to do the work still, but AI can drastically help in speed, right? For some technologies better than for others, I would also argue, and it's still a long way to make this better and better, because, I mean, we're also working on those kind of technologies, and it's complex, right? And sometimes you're kind of fighting with the AI to make it work, and then I feel like, well, maybe you should do it without from the beginning, right? So, but again, I think AI can definitely help. I think understanding the industry, I think it's not only essentiality, it's what's about transparency. I think many of the major owners would argue, are we not even going into a discussion about essentiality? We're going into a discussion with providing the information that our technology is great. And even if you have more SEPs than I have, my SEPs are worth 5 times more, right? So it's a question of value. And who's going to decide that? In AI, it's, again, right? We're coming to the limits, of course, of what is needed and wanted. But still, I think, even though we can't solve it all, Shiraz, right? I mean, you cannot solve this whole industry, and next year we don't need to have the conference because everyone's happy, right? I think you can contribute to it, right? And the bigger the contribution, the richer you will be, right? I can tell you that. So I think you are on the right track. I think with AI, we are on the right track to help. I think it's the only dangerous thing that could happen is that people use it in the wrong way, that we push that button and say it's essential or not. I think there will also be AI that fights claim charts, right? I've actually met a company that does that. So you will have an AI fighting the AI on essentiality. And maybe there's an AI judge to say who's right? So that's my view of the future.
Now, just to come back on the topic of transparency, I'm not sure that transparency as such is an objective. It's a mean. It's a mean for both sides to achieve something, and this something is to define a framework that is appropriate to conduct ultimately license negotiation in relation with SEPs. I don't think that anyone, whether it is an implementer or SEP holder, is trying to achieve full transparency only for the beauty of achieving transparency. So then it is a question of how far we need to go with transparency to have this framework that can be appropriate for everyone. And can artificial intelligence help to achieve this objective? Maybe, maybe not. I tend to share your opinion that artificial intelligence tool remains tool. So I agree that we have to be cautious that artificial intelligence is not going to deliver a perfect truth. And so that means that should it be of any help, for example, when processing SEP disclosure or trying to produce a claim chart, it remains a tool and it should be used, in my view, cautiously.
Thank you, Magali. Maybe Pere, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much. So if I can add to the discussion of AI, I would like to also give some hints on how this is being incorporated into EPO, because of course AI is everywhere, also at the EPO, and it's arriving, and it's very important to adopt it in the right ways. So what I can tell is that so far we are using AI for classification of technologies, for assigning files to examiners. We are using AI for legal queries, for research, automate repetitive tasks. We also have pilots for using AI in supporting analysis of applications, summarizing documents, drafting minutes for oral meetings, and we also use it for translations, which is an important thing in the office, right? But I would like to emphasize, and I think this stands for our activity of assessing novelty and examining patterns, and also probably for essentiality checks. But in our case, that's for sure the reality that we have a human-centered approach, right? And the human component cannot be overlooked. It's very, very important, no matter how important AI is going to be in the future. We have our expert examiners, and expert examiners are the ones guiding the system, and AI is going to magnify their work. And when I was teaching at the university, I taught a course on AI, and I was using the book Prediction Machines by 3 professors from the Rodman School of Management, University of Toronto. In case you haven't read it, it's a very nice book for all audiences. And their main thesis was that AI is a prediction machine, right? And what it does is that there will be more prediction at a lower cost, and therefore prediction will be used more often as an input to make judgment, right, and judgment calls. And this is what's going to happen. So we're going to have more AI doing prediction, but then the judgment calls will be for examiners, and prediction will give a percentage chance that a claim is novel or not, but the yes/no decision on whether there's novelty, that will be the examiners, right? And let's not forget that AIs are trained on data points, and these data points are also created by examiners for the most part. And so that's also there. Just a comment.
Thank you all for these comments on AI and SEP transparency. So as far as I could understand, SEP transparency will depend as much on our collective wisdom in the implementation as it is on the technology itself. We have about 2.5 minutes left, so maybe we can take a few of the questions, we had quite a few questions.
Can I just ask something? There was a very cheeky question early on addressed to Tim about the fact that PanScope...
was even humor in it, right?
No, it was good. Well, they were asking if IP Lexis will be given away for free. So as an IP Lytics customer, are we going to get it for free, Tim?
So there was another question: if we only provide 1% better data than Scopus, can then the price difference be also 1%? Or on top of that, the question asked for a FRAND rate to access of IPlytics. Fortunately, we are not bound to FRAND, right? We can ask any price. Second, I would argue it's a little bit more than 1%. It's a free market, right? If you don't like it, don't subscribe to it. If you're happy, keep subscribing, right? So, but it's, for a Friday, I like those questions. It's fun. Thank you, guys.
So no discount then?
Let's discuss it later.
Okay.
Over a beer.
Thanks to whoever asked
a bottle
that
of
question.
champagne.
It made my day.
Let's pick another question. We have 1 minute left.
I mean, maybe one question came up a couple of times on value, and I think essentiality is a big part in looking at SEPs, right? I think we can all agree if a patent is not essential, it doesn't provide value to the standard, you don't have to subscribe to, you don't have to license to it. But I think that many companies like the Qualcomms and the Ericsson and Nokias of this world would argue some of our patents are foundational physical layer inventions that have provided a lot of value to the standard, and others came later on a maybe even optional part of the standard that are still also essential but come at a different value, right? So, and I think that is something, you know, no matter if you agree to what I said or not, is a discussion that often happens in FRAND licensing, that even though two patents are essential, you wouldn't say they count the same way, right? One may be more valuable than the other because the underlying technology is, right? So I think even if everything would be perfectly SEP claim charted, that argument would still be in the room, right?
Thank you, team, for that intervention. And now we are, I think, done. We don't have time, so please join me in thanking our panelists for their contributions to this important conversation.
Thank you.